because you fear the rejection of those who are closest to you more than anything else. So to come out and discuss these things with people almost feels taboo, right?
A big ass light falls out of the sky and smashes on the street in front of this guy's house. It almost hits him. He walks over and picks it up. It's heavy, it's got screws in it, it's got a label on it that says Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. The brightest star in this man's entire heavens just landed on the pavement with a part number on it. So he's holding proof. It's proof the sky is not real, and he's holding a piece of it in his hands. And then he gets in his car, the car radio comes on and says an aircraft was shedding parts over the area. It's a crappy explanation, but that doesn't matter. The explanation doesn't have to be good. It just has to arrive before the question finishes forming.
And now we have classic cognitive dissonance. It's that thing that you've gone through, we see everyone around us going through. When you already have beliefs put in place, it's so much easier for your brain. In fact, your brain is hardwired to keep those beliefs, no matter what evidence comes to discredit those beliefs. Your brain essentially wants to run on the easiest, most efficient possible structure it can. And when it's time to rewire a belief, your brain has to kick in and do some work. So this is why cognitive dissonance is so strong, and you see it everywhere.
And it does. A man held the brightest star in his sky and proof that his version of reality was not real, and then went to work. So everybody thinks the horror of this movie is this giant dome, the cameras, this fake wife that Truman has. The horror is the speed at how fast a human being hands the evidence of a false reality back and just rejoins the day. So the dome is not the trap for Truman, it's the schedule. And understand the timing of this here. This is 19.
Understand what Chase is saying here. By the way, this is Chase Hughes. If you've not seen any of his videos, I highly recommend them. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Anyways, the point Chase is getting at here is the actual cage, the structures that keep us locked to this false narrative, this false reality, is hardwired in your brain. You don't need bars to keep you in this room. Plato's Cave.
1998. There's no Big Brother yet. That's probably a year away or some change. No Survivor, no YouTube, no Facebook, no smartphones. When this movie said an ordinary man's life can be real content, the technology to make that real hadn't even been invented yet. So the film wasn't mocking our modern world. It got here before we did. So this isn't going to be a movie review, and it's not a conspiracy video. It is a breakdown of the oldest story that humans tell. And
now, why is that important? The fact that this movie came out long before social media, it is telling a much deeper story. It's telling you that each and every one of us play a character in this movie we call life. And every person you come into contact with is more concerned about validation than they are about being authentic. And the same goes for each and every one of you. You naturally put on this mask, this fake character, and you play the part of the person that you think the opposite person would respond well to. This is why you see people change like that in an instant, depending on who they're around. There's people who even pick up accents when they're around other people. So what happens is you play this role, you put on this mask and you play this role, but the person or people you come into contact with, they also play the role. And here's the interesting thing about that. You have never met an authentic person, the real inner person, anytime in your life. And no one has ever met the authentic you.
And it's so old that a Hollywood studio shot it frame for frame and apparently never noticed that they were filming actual scripture. By the end of this, you'll know something almost nobody figures out. Why showing a person the absolute truth usually makes them grip onto a lie even harder. And the one thing that actually works instead of that. So once you see the seams between all of this, I don't think you'll be able to unsee them. So the first big thing that you need to understand about the cage is it's really frickin' nice. Seahaven, this town that Truman lives in, is clean and bright. The fences are all super painted perfectly. These pastel storefronts, there's weather that just does what it's supposed to do. And it looks like an America that maybe some of us half remember from somewhere. And that's the trick here. It's built to look familiar. It's a copy of an America that was already a fantasy and then getting sold back to the people that are living inside of it. These movie producers didn't build this. They actually found it when they were filming. Seahaven is a real town. It's called Seaside, Florida. It's a master planned community on the Gulf Coast. The crew showed up and barely changed a thing. People actually live there in this neighborhood. One thing, if you've seen The Truman Show, you'll notice there's no bars. There's nothing keeping him in. So watch it again and look for a bar, but it won't look like a bar. But nobody drags Truman out of bed. No one locks the door while he's sleeping at night. There's a job, there's a wife, a mortgage, a couple of pre-approved dreams, and there's a fear of water.
These are the bars. The point Chase is making here is that these bars exist for each and every one of us, and they exist only in here. That's what keeps you locked to the false narratives and the false reality.
Exactly where the exit is. So look hard at that fear of the water, because it didn't grow there naturally. It wasn't some natural event that happened to him. It was installed in him when he was a little kid. When Truman's a kid, the director, his name's Christoph, stages his father's drowning on a boat in a storm in front of him. They killed his dad, on paper at least, to make this kid terrified of water, because water is the only way out of town. Then they spent 30 years keeping this wound open. Some elementary school teacher tells Truman, who wants to be Magellan, "You're too late. There's nothing left to explore." The travel agency has a poster on the wall of a plane getting struck by lightning. And the caption on this poster is, "It could happen to you." So he goes in there, he tries to book a flight to Fiji. There's nothing for a month. He tries the bus. The bus breaks down. Every road out of Seahaven gets a forest fire, a traffic jam, or some leak at a chemical plant on demand. So Christoph.
So how does that apply to each and every one of us in our daily lives? I mean, the roads don't just catch fire on their own. You know, the buses don't just automatically break down because you're trying to go somewhere else. This is all metaphorical. These are the situations that run through your mind in order to keep you from running towards the truth. It's fears that you don't even cognitively think about or have an inner dialogue with yourself about, because the fear of losing comfort is so ingrained in us, we would rather just not face those fears.
never tells Truman no. He makes sure that no is the only thing the environment ever says. And I want you to think about that, because that applies into all of our lives. He didn't touch Truman's decisions. He arranges the conditions and lets the man, Truman, decide to stay all by himself. That beats prison bars every single time. A man, a person, is going to defend their own decisions to the death. So before anybody gets comfortable that this is just fiction, we've been actually building Seahaven in the open for 30 years and calling it programming. Cops, this reality TV show about cops, turned all of these guys' badges into a TV season with a theme song. The Bachelor turned real human love into some tournament bracket. We watched real wars, like the initial Iraq War, through a correspondence video camera until the dying in combat started looking.
Why? I mean, you have to have noticed this through the years. Every time there is a major conflict or a virus or some sort of possible outbreak of something, it is stuck in your face 24/7. They will not let go of that narrative until the narrative has progressed enough to where it's ingrained in you. Then, like that, it moves on to the next. It moves on so fast, there's zero downtime for you to sit and literally think through the information that's been delivered to you before they move on to the next. And here's the side effect of that. Once those seeds have all been planted and they move on to the next, those seeds stay there, but now you're focused on something else. And trust me, those seeds will eventually grow into a mighty oak, and they will use that. They will come back to that oak. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe 10 years down the road, but it is already within you.
Like TV coverage. Nobody had to build a dome over any of us. We lined up. We auditioned for this. There's a detail from the movie I think that a lot of people don't even notice. Truman was the first baby legally adopted by a corporation. It's said in the movie. They picked him out of 6 unwanted pregnancies because he was born on cue. His first win in the ratings was showing up on schedule. A company owned a human being from its first breath. It broadcast the birth live, and the world's response was to subscribe. Nobody marched, nobody sued, no lawsuits. They tuned in.
Tell me you wouldn't tune in.
It's a corporation owning a baby, and the world just subscribed. So what is the whole thing for? What is the Truman Show for? The product placement in the Truman Show is a joke until it's not. Truman's wife would hold up some box of cocoa and read the label to a camera that he can't see. And the first time it's kind of funny. You know, we laugh at it. And the second time we notice what we're looking at, that his life is for sale. The marriage.
Is your life for sale? Have you ever even thought about that? Is there a possibility in any way, shape, or form, no matter how insignificant that possibility may be, that your own very life is for sale?
Is fake. The fear is basically just inventory, and the coffee is just inventory. Even the audience crying about him is inventory. They cry during the show, and they buy the products during the commercial breaks. The comfort here is the bait. There's one incredible, incisive line here from the man who runs this entire show, and his name's Christoph, which is a play on the word Christ, or on the name Christ. We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented.
It's as simple as that.
He thinks he's describing his prisoner, Truman. He's describing the audience. So think about the...
We accept the reality of the world of which we're presented. Why would you question it? Why would anyone question the reality of their own world? At first glance, it doesn't make sense, does it? Why would you do that? I'll tell you, it's very important that you do start questioning the reality of your world for many reasons. The reality is all these negative things that are pushed on us through the press, the media, I promise you, are nowhere near as bad as it seems. And if you turn off the media, turn off your computers, set your cell phone down for a little while, your life's still going to go on. Nothing's going to change. Everything's going to be okay. There's no point in the fear that they push us to, the anger, the division. There's no need for any of it. But the average person, they wouldn't think that's true because they don't spend time questioning reality.
rectangle that you grabbed this morning before your eyes were all the way open. A war, a recipe, a dead kid, a workout, some skincare ad, someone crying in a parked car, 90 seconds, all of it. And we call that staying informed. That is weather.
We're going to be accessing the weather program.
That is the manufactured, emotional weather that you saw in the Truman Show. And it never has to sell you one big ass lie. It feeds you these small little pellets. There's an outrage pellet. Here's a fear pellet. Here's belonging and enemy. So 200 small instructions about what to feel before you even get to lunch. And people still believe that their thoughts are theirs. So Seahaven is the clean version of all this. There's no infinite scrolling. There's no comment section full of idiots. It's the same machine with better landscaping. So every fabricated world has a maker. And a long time before Hollywood put him in a control room, people gave him a name. But let's start with a kid here. Before any of this, Truman, what did he want to be? He wants to be Magellan. He wanted to go to Fiji, the one place on the map that nobody colored in for him, the unexplored place. He's a grown man and he's still climbing the rocks at the edge of town to stare at the horizon.
I have a interesting theory about this grown man thing. You know, people on average, as a whole, maybe, I don't know. Let me know if you've ever thought about this. Listen, we're all children. We never grow up in the way society tells us we have to. We just put on new masks and we play different roles in different parts. The truth is, people never grow up. We're just children playing with more expensive toys, right? Children with more responsibilities. And it's sad, if you think about it, what would that look like to take your everyday life and your everyday emotions and place those on a 5-year-old? To watch that 5-year-old suffer and struggle through the same day in and day out process that you put yourself through. What would that look like on a 5-year-old? Would you allow it? Then why do it to yourself?
So hold on to that for a second. The restlessness that Truman feels throughout his life is the most important thing in the entire film. It's the one thing that 30 years of behavioral engineering never killed off. The man who built the world around that kid lives in the moon, literally. Christoph. He talks about Truman like a proud father. He remembers his first steps. He gets teary-eyed about seeing Truman on live TV. And then there's a part in the movie where he says the quiet part out loud. When Truman's about to escape, he says the words, "There's no more truth out there than there is in the world I created for him." It's the oldest lie in existence. And it's delivered into a microphone like some dumbass weather report.
And let's be very clear about something. This is metaphorical about the Christ within you. Now, we're not talking about the biblical Christ at the moment. We're talking about the voice in your head that controls your every move, makes suggestions to you, warns you about things that are about to happen, tricks you. This is the Christ that this movie is portraying.
Because here is where this stops being a movie and becomes something that people died over. There was an ancient religion called the Gnostics, which just means knowledge. The eventual church spent real effort stamping out and killing and murdering. But they had a name for this figure exactly like Christoph, and it was called the Demiurge, which just means false creator. He builds a lower world and mistakes the edge of his set, his little property, for the edge of everything. And inside that world, trapped in that world, is a spark, what they say. It's a piece of something real that was never supposed to be inside of the cage. That's the kid who wanted to go to Fiji. So you don't get out of the cage by believing the right thing or through some gnosis, which is direct to knowing. And no one's going to argue you awake. And in the Truman Show, Sylvia is the call. She's the one.
Think about the movie The Matrix and who was the guy who turned on Neo, the guy who sold him out, the Judas, so to speak, in the movie, right? Think about the scene where he's sitting there eating the steak. Ignorance is bliss. He's choosing. He knows that that world is fake. He knows that going back to that world means being enslaved all over again. Yet he chooses to for comfort.
One who breaks character to tell the sleeper, Truman, that the world is fake. She gets dragged off the beach mid-sentence, and for the rest of the film, she's out there wearing a pin that says one big ass thing on it, and it's a huge line in the movie. How's it going to end? It's the only honest question that anyone in the movie asks. Notice how Truman wakes up. How does he go through his awakening process? No one's handing him a pamphlet. No one's getting him into a new religion or anything like that. Nobody argues him into it. It's contact. An elevator opens on some backstage area that can't possibly exist in his reality. Rain falls on him, only him, this tiny little circle of rain that follows him down the beach when he moves. His car radio skips to a frequency where the voice is narrating his own turns with his car back to him in real life. And then, it's my favorite thing he does in the entire film. He runs an experiment. He sits in the car with his wife and predicts every single car's movement on the street. the lady on the bike, the man with the flowers, the Volkswagen with the dented fender. They come around the corner in that exact order.
This is super
They're
important.
on a loop, he says. He didn't believe his way out. He checked his way out. And that's a huge difference here. So going quickly back to the Gnostics, here's what those old sects understood that we forgot completely. A prison does not need walls, but it does need guards. And the best guards on earth have no idea that they are guarding anything. Just watch the kitchen in the Truman Show. Truman starts coming apart at the counter. His whole life is like splitting open, and he's trying to say something out loud. Something is wrong. People are lying to me. I can't trust all these people. And his wife turns around, smiles at no one standing there in the room, picks up this box of cocoa, and starts repeating the label at the camera and the sales pitch. For half a second, it's funny, and then it's disgusting and sick, because he sees it. He sees the seam just kind of tearing down the middle of his own marriage. She's not talking to him. She's talking to the thing behind the wall.
I absolutely love that scene. And she's showing him the cocoa, you know, and his reaction. Who you talking to? It's priceless. Because when you start seeing yourself in that exact situation, obviously not ads, that's metaphorical, but people are not talking to you, right? They're talking to your mask. They're talking to the false you that you've projected to them. Understand that. When people attack you for your beliefs, people attack you for the way you move, the way you look, you know, the things you say, they're not attacking the true you. They're attacking the mask, the projection that you put out into this world. They can't attack the true you if they've never seen the true you, right?
And the thing behind the wall has been there the whole entire time. And the question that opens up in his body is the one the entire operation can't survive. How long? And this question that he's asking himself, it doesn't stay in the present moment. It runs backward. Every dinner he had, these anniversaries, every time she told him, he was imagining things. Every time she made his fear sound like wisdom, and all of his dreams sounded like a weird phase that he was going through. All of that just resorted at once in a kitchen over a box of cocoa. Everything got back to its right place. So look at.
Understand what he's talking about here. This whole section that Chase has been describing is about the guards that keep us locked in our prison. And those guards are the people that you run into on a daily basis, especially the people closest to you. Why? Why are they the guards? Because you fear the rejection of those who are closest to you more than anything else. So to come out and discuss these things with people almost feels taboo, right? Oh, you're insane. Who wants to hear that? Who really is strong enough to go out and start describing to random people that their reality is false? How far will you get in that conversation before the guards start shutting you down? It's very, very, very important that we see that we understand what's happening. And again, it's not you they're attacking. One, it's partly cognitive dissonance. They don't want to hear the truth. It's too hard. So they shut it down. Two, they don't want to leave the comfort that they're in, right? And three, they don't want to let you leave it either, because if you do leave that and you begin to see reality for what it really is, then they know they've lost you, and you'll never look at them the same way ever again.
Her face while this is happening in the movie. The fear is absolutely real. She's an actress, but the fear isn't acting at all. She's a person nailed inside this role that just stopped protecting her. Because the man that she's paid to manage, not marry, is finally looking at her like a piece of evidence. That is the real mechanism that I want you to really fully get into your bones. The people closest to Truman, we say, oh yeah, they're all lying to him. That's not it. They're keeping him organized inside of the lie. And that is maybe a filthier kind of control than any wall, because it never shows up like a bunch of orders or a bunch of authority figures. It shows up as concern when his friend shows up with the six-pack. His wife never says, don't leave. What does she say? She says, you need rest. You're not yourself. We have a great life. Why would you want something else? It's soft enough to kind of pass for love, but it's definitely strong enough to hold a grown-ass man down for 30 years. And if you want this a little darker, the film gives it to you darker if you pay attention. There's a scene on this unfinished bridge at nighttime. Truman's best friend is there. They have a six-pack together. His name's Marlon. And he turns his head and looks at Truman and says, the last thing that I would ever do is lie to you. And the movie cuts scene to the control room where Christoph is speaking that exact sentence into Marlon's concealed earpiece, like a half second before Marlon says it. The most intimate sentence in Truman's entire life is just from dictation. His best friend's love is being read off a script in real time by the man who built the town. And then they bring the dead father back, the dad that they killed to install the fear. Maybe he's resurrected for ratings. There's a fog machine, there's a crane shot, there's music on cue. Christoph is in the booth calling all these camera angles on the hug. All this stuff happening live while Truman is crying into his dad's shoulder. They monetize that grief twice, that once at the funeral, and then they monetize the grief again at the reunion. And the tears were real. The tears were the product that made money. And back to the Gnostics really quick. They called this layer the Archons. These are the enforcers who keep the sleeper asleep. So in the Truman Show, they don't wear a bunch of armor and stuff like that. They wear cardigans and wedding rings and a six-pack of beer and blue jeans. If you have a prison that's guarded by a bunch of monsters, you get a riot at the end of the day. If you have a prison guarded by people who love you, you get a ton of confusion. And confusion will always buy you one thing, and that's time. So here's the only line in the entire movie separating that movie from your street where you live. In Seahaven, the guards get a paycheck. Every neighbor, every barista, every smiling extra person walking down the street in the morning.
Only difference.
They clock into work. They perform the town. Then they go home and they cash the check. Out here, nobody's getting paid to enforce this stuff. We perform the town for free. We learned this script so frickin' young that we think it's who we are. We say stuff like, fine, how are you? And we answer that to a question that no one asks sincerely. 10 times a day. And we went one step further than Seahaven ever did. Truman's 5,000 cameras were hidden from him. Ours, we carry around. We bring them. We point them at ourselves. We do the product reads into the camera for free, just hoping some audience shows up. And Christoph needed this $1 billion dome to get one dude to live on camera. We volunteered for it. And we brought our own camera equipment. Why does the evidence not wake anybody up? Why doesn't the Cocoa ads, the lawnmower ads, the weird rain, the looping vehicles on the street, the backstage door toward the end of the movie, it doesn't wake anybody up? In the late 1950s, this psychologist named Leon Festinger got himself somehow inside of a doomsday group that really believed this giant flood was coming on a very specific date. So they had the complete date, time, everything this was going to happen. The flood never came. And you'd bet that would end it. And for a couple of people it did. But the most famous finding of the study is the opposite of this.
This gets very deep and very interesting. But I've got to save that for part 2. So if you're enjoying this, click part 2. I'm going to put it up there or over there. Maybe up there. I'm not, wherever YouTube lets me stick it, but it'll be on screen. Click part 2 and I'll see you over there. All right. Later.